Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Susan Welton, Oracle Marketing Manager at Perficient, and I'm excited to be moderating today's webinar, Cardtronics Future Ready with Oracle EPM Cloud. Time permitting, we will have a Q&A session at the end of today's event, so please type your questions into the chat box located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and feel free to do that at any point in time throughout today's webinar. Two questions often come up with our online events. Can I get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording? And the answer to both questions is yes. We will email you that link with the information on how to access both the slides and the recording following today's event. And you'll probably see that sometime tomorrow, I would imagine. Without further delay, I would like to introduce today's speakers. Richard Ng, Director of Financial Systems at Cardtronics, Rich Wilkie, VP EPM Product Management at Oracle, Priyakant Rami, Project Manager, Oracle EPM at Perficient, and Stephen Bricker, Strategic Account Director at Perficient. Richard is responsible for the oversight and enhancement of Oracle EPM Hyperion products, including HFM, Planning, SBase, FDMEE, OBIEE, and ODI. He provides finance, project implementation plans, and technical advice on Hyperion products, the underlying databases, and hardware platforms. Rich leads a team of product managers at Oracle involved in driving enhanced enterprise performance management functionality throughout product offerings. Rami has 20 years of experience in IT, finance, and HR solutions, including enterprise architecture, systems development, and Oracle EPM implementations in a variety of industries. Stephen is an account director with almost 20 years experience selling enterprise technology solutions. Stephen is also a frequent presenter at Oracle conferences and just presented at Oracle Open World last year. I'd like to say welcome to all my speakers, and I'm going to hand it over to Stephen to start today's webinar. Stephen?
Thank you very much, and just wanted to thank Richard with Cardtronics for joining us again. Like I always say, everyone on this call is a customer, because if you've used an ATM, you are likely a Cardtronics customer. So thank you so much for joining. Just in terms of the agenda for today, we're going to cover a little bit about Perficient and then focus on the Oracle EPM Cloud story. Richard Wilkie from Product Development and Product Marketing from Oracle is joining us. So we have a special guest, and then the highlight of today is to hear more from Cardtronics and their cloud transformation with the EPM Cloud applications. We'll also have questions throughout, so lots of good information shared from Cardtronics. A little bit more about Perficient. We're excited to be a part of their journey and story. We're a national consultancy across the U.S. with offices offshore as well, and in other countries such as the UK, China, and India. We have about 4,000 consultants across the US and growing. And one of the things we pride ourselves on is our repeat business rate. Specifically, Cardtronics, as an example, has been a customer of ours for over 10 years in the Oracle EPM space, having originally implemented their on-premise Hyperion solutions with a full stack. We are publicly traded, and we definitely have a lot of capabilities across the entire Oracle environment and ecosystem. To that note, in addition to EPM, we also have a full ERP consultancy and focus primarily on the Oracle Cloud applications, in addition to having speed to value service to map and gap your on-premise solutions to the cloud for ERP, EPM, and business intelligence. We also have a number of Oracle CEI and Cloud Excellence certifications, which are the wonderful flaming hoops, but true certifications and validation from our customers and our capabilities and our success with the applications that we implement. Related to those applications, our Oracle EPM practice, but we've been implementing for almost 20 years the Oracle, starting originally with the Hyperion suite, and then, of course, over time, looking at the complete EPM suite. I always like to say, just kind of as a soapbox, that we focus on more than just the tactical implementations, but we really focus on strategy up front. So one of the big focus areas is around financial process optimization and how that could and advice around process improvement, in addition to the configuration. And of course, we have managed services and operate an Oracle authorized education center. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rich Wilkie so we could hear a bit more from product marketing and product development. Rich?
Great, thanks, Stephen. So welcome, everybody. Rich Wilkie here from Oracle, and thanks to Perficient for inviting me and allowing me just a few minutes to share just a little bit of a cloud update from the Oracle perspective. So one of the interesting things that we're seeing right now in our business is obviously sort of the transition that customers are moving from the on-premises world over to the cloud. One of the real driving forces that we're seeing for that is the difference between an upgrade and an update. Think of our traditional on-premises customers, and mind you, I've been working at Hyperion, now Oracle, for 20 years, always focused in this space, so this is something quite near and dear to my heart. Our on-premise customers, when they upgrade, they're really doing what we call a technical upgrade. So like every 3 to 5 years, they're saying, you know what, we need to get the latest browser support or Windows Server support or, you know, something over Office support. And they're really doing an upgrade simply just to take advantage of that technical side. It's quite an intensive process, and they're really not looking for any functional value. Flash over to the cloud, and you've got customers doing monthly updates. Oracle does all of that for you. So everyone is current in the cloud, everyone's on the latest and greatest version, everyone's getting advantage or able to take advantage of the latest and greatest functionality. They don't have to, but it's available to them. They don't have to wait 3 to 5 years to get it. So it does really bring everyone current and allow them to much more focus on the functional side versus really the technical side, which was really much more so in the on-premises world. We do a survey of all of our cloud customers every year, and we ask them a number of questions just to understand more sort of what value are they seeing in the software. And just a few, examples that you can see here. 53% are seeing increased or improved communication and collaboration. We all struggle, especially now where we're all working from home, to kind of work better with our peers. And so having that improved communication and collaboration is really a key way for us to be more successful in our job. 27% are seeing an increase in value-added analysis, 71% reduction in the use of spreadsheets for budgeting. Spreadsheets are great, except they're isolated. You're on an island, it's just yours. You're not really sharing them. You're not really working with other people. People are seeing improvement in accuracy, reduction in time to close the books. Time is money. These are all validations of the value of EPM Cloud and what it can do for you. So Gartner is, if you're not familiar with Gartner, Gartner is a leading industry analyst that takes a look at all different facets of the software world, but certainly looks at EPM Cloud in 2 capacities, one in the financial planning area and the other one in the financial close area. Gartner came out with their most latest Magic Quadrant for financial planning last summer, for financial close last fall. The nice thing here is Oracle is recognized as a leader in both quadrants. Mind you, we are the only vendor that is a leader in both quadrants. So that means we're not specialized in just one area. We're that darn good in both of them. I think that's an interesting perspective because every vendor can tell you how good they are, but having an outside analyst come in and sort of validate that approach and validate the information that we give to our customers is a nice thing. And honestly, as an employee of Oracle, it makes me feel good to know that we're doing good with the work that we're producing. So if you're wondering how many people do it, a whole lot, right? Almost 5,000 customers, almost 8,000 subscriptions in pretty much every country across every industry. It's pervasive, it's there, everyone's doing it. You're not going to be the first. You're just following along a big pathway of this. And I can tell you these numbers only keep growing as customers want to be more nimble and be more current with their software and what it can bring for them. So just to give you a little perspective on what exactly makes up EPM Cloud, I'm going to break it down for you. So first and foremost, there's really like 5 key areas. Connected planning is one of those key areas. And it's not just doing your forecast, but it's really why we call it connected is it brings all areas and all facets of planning together, all the way from operational line of business directly to strategic plans and really linking all of that together. There's capacity for zero-based budgeting if that's something your organization's looking to. Strategic modeling is super hot right now because obviously we're all trying to figure out what the future is going to be and how we get there. So even things like long-range planning, these are all capacities that make up that connected planning module, which makes up EPM Cloud. We also have comprehensive financial close. Now, comprehensive financial close is more than just consolidation. I grew my teeth really in this industry working on financial consolidation, but it's much more than that. It's all the way from your close process and how we keep track of all the activities in your close process, to doing your reconciliations and all your compliance activities, things like transfer pricing, things like the reporting output. That's all parts of that comprehensive financial close, and that's what we deliver with our software, not just one of those, but all of those. And then obviously none of this stuff is any good without good reporting. You really need that solid analytics and reporting to go ahead and be able to actually distribute that information and make decisions based on the analysis that was done. So things like interactive dashboards, report books, collaborative narrative management of reports is really critical. I can give every one of you a schedule, but without actually commentary describing what that information means in the context, it means nothing to you. So all these capabilities are part of EPM Cloud. Obviously, systems have a whole lot of metadata involved in them. Having an enterprise data management system that can go ahead and allow you to have one version of your metadata, your accounts, your entity structures, your product dimensions, all that information across all your different applications centrally managed with process and hierarchy is really a critical area. That's what enterprise data management gives you, and that's another capacity of EPM Cloud. And then finally, emerging tech is an interesting thing. Emerging technology for emerging technology's sake is kind of useless, but if you bring it into the context of how can it help me make my process better, it becomes terribly interesting. So how can we use predictive analytics to help you look for information that's coordinated in your data and go ahead and allow you to make better decisions based on that? How can I look at historical values and see trends in my process that help me predict the future? How can I go ahead and automate more of my close process to make it that much more efficient and allow more time for analysis? Those are all areas where I can bring emerging technology into the process and make the system better. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Richard, who's going to take us through the story of Cardtronics.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Perficient, for having me here to share our success story with the EPM implementation to the cloud last year. Let me kind of talk about who we are in Cardtronics. So Cardtronics is a publicly traded company. We are the largest independent ATM operator. We service merchants over every shape and size with programs that fit each unique need. Cardtronics have the most comprehensive monitor management and maintenance program in the industry. As the leader of the ATM business, Cardtronics dispense over 55 billion in cash through over 111,000 ATMs every year. We have ATM in US, Canada, Mexico, Germany, Spain, UK, Ireland, South Africa, and Australia, Asia. So Cardtronics, not just an ATM company, we are enabling, customer to drive the growth, the install traffic, and retail transaction. We also work very closely with financial services provider to deliver superior service at the ATM through branding All-Point Network, which is the world's largest surcharge-free ATM network. As the champion of cash, Cardtronics' goal is to convert digital currency into physical cash, drive payments choice for businesses and consumers alike, drive profitability at the register at the ATM for more satisfied customer base. So that's who we are in Cardtronics. So and I'm going to turn it over to Stephen.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Richard. So tell us a little bit about, kind of what it was like before, what applications you were running, maybe what it was like to manage these on-premise solutions and environment.
Yes, like we were, before the upgrade to the cloud, we were on Hyperion 11.1.2.3, which has been for, almost 4 years since the upgrade. Like as Rich said, we've been kind of skeptical about whether to go to 2.4 or should we, stay on the cloud. So what we have is basically just like a lot of the Hyperion on-premise customer, we have the full suite of product, which have HFM, planning, S-Base, SmartView, financial reporting. We are EPMA shop. We're not the classic shop. We also have Blackline as our account reconciliation tool. Great Plains is a very much a old quote unquote accounting system that we have deployed it back when Cardtronics was actually a small Delaware company. So, and we definitely, with the size that I talked about being a global company, we definitely need a way to have a more dependable, more scalable system to going forward to do for our closing and all the operations.
So speaking of growth, I know that you guys grew tremendously internationally, and how did that impact just in terms of your drivers for change, and what were some of the reasons and justification?
Oh, definitely. The scalable system and dependable software is definitely a key driver, which I think Oracle as a whole does satisfy that one of the business driver, being going on ERP and having EPM as doing a lot of the consolidation and planning side of the process. Obviously, on HFM is a great product, don't get me wrong, but then we've been struggling with some of the consolidation time and also lacking with the intercompany elimination process. That's also one of the key drivers to the change. And then go ahead.
No, go. I was just going to ask. I know you pointed out before, just kind of in terms of the release cycles and what your strategy was for the deployment in terms of all these different applications. Was it concurrent? What was your deployment strategy?
So you mentioned in terms of the on-premise?
For cloud, for the cloud. How do you guys?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So we basically EPM is part of the project that we call the name Odyssey. The main goal is to replace Great Plains as the accounting system. So ERP is part of the main ingredients of that. So EPM comes in as well as part of the consolidation planning strategy. So we basically break it into two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1, we are utilizing UK as our first guinea pig, and as they are large enough in terms of business operation, to kind of let out test out the water to see how this affects the whole overall business. Then phase 2, we have North America comes in, which is our major revenue driver from the US and North American market, and to finish that last summer. So pretty much we went live with almost 95% of a company transaction last July. We finished that and have a successful go live with that.
Great. I see on here it talks about obviously their financial process. Did you guys do any kind of financial process change or chart of account rationalization up front?
Definitely we did. We think this is the team basically at Cardtronics thinks this is a perfect opportunity to streamline all the business processes. One of the ask is to basically simplify the chart of account. So we took that as a initiative to make our process more efficient, better, and more user friendly. And obviously, part of it is, like I talked about earlier, the consolidation process does need a kind of boost. And I think the cloud consolidation module does have a advantage being utilizing the Oracle Cloud hardware, and definitely is one of our driver to make that decision to move on to cloud.
And I know there were other decisions. So tell us more about how you guys came about to choose Oracle Cloud and justify the solution.
One of the things that I saw and also decision that make us to the cloud is automation, integration between one platform. So if you can look at our legacy system, we are having so many different brand of product, like Hyperion, Blackline, GP. Now, definitely going to Oracle with one single platform and one vendor definitely make the integration a lot more efficient, and the cost is a lot lower. And then the reasonable timeline in terms of basically it's almost like a lift and shift strategy, especially as our user being very familiar with the Hyperion on-premise system. Going to cloud for the EPM side, it's definitely have a great advantage of it. So it almost seems like a seamless transitions for some of the user, other than they have to learn our new chart of account structure. That's probably one of the more effort in terms of training our user. In terms of cost of ownership, definitely from getting out from the on-prem, we no longer need to have infrastructure costs behind the scene, and which would definitely is a major decision driver to go to the cloud. And also it also allows us to have a lot of flexibility in terms of getting updates, and also working closely with Oracle team on the support side, and work with them on troubleshooting different issues that come on board, and they do have respond relatively in a timely manner, and then also provide solution at the end. And I think that's also help on the support side, and it actually relieve a lot of IT related costs for us.
Thanks, Richard. What about the different applications and solutions you guys are running today within EPM Cloud?
Yeah, so definitely, as I talked through, from HFM is our previous consolidation engine. Now with the consolidation module on the cloud, it definitely have drive a lot of efficient in place. So our consolidation time actually increased by 50%. And we also now introducing intercompany elimination process. Just having that setup is definitely an advantage to automate that process. And rules perspective, I know a lot of people in HFM probably have written a lot of rules, and we actually have eliminate most of our custom rule that we have built, and then utilize the consolidation module out of box functionality pretty much. On the planning side, the greatest advantage we have took on is the workforce module that come out of the box, being integrated with the HCM that we also deploy as part of our Odyssey project. That has allowed us to become from a HR data standpoint, it turns into a very the entire company get on the same platform, and finance, the FP&A team basically can get the global HR data very handy at that point, because the integration is very seamless. With Perficient team help, we set it up in a very efficient manner, and then the data comes through as expected. Account reconciliation is also what we have deployed. We have the legacy is BlackLine, and it's kind of makes sense to just go ahead and convert it over to Oracle account reconciliation, just so that we can have one platform, one vendor, and the integration is also very seamless. Just integrated back to our Oracle ERP system. And from a narrative reporting standpoint, it does allow us to convert many of our Excel-based report back into more the traditional FR, which I think today is the narrative reporting route. And that's also allow us to have more, actually less offline Excel report that Rich actually talks about earlier. And enterprise data management, which is EDM, is definitely a major ingredient that we need in the past. As you can see on our Hyperion on-premise deployment, we are EPM A shop. As if people familiar with EPMA, is more silo only just to manage Hyperion related product. But now this with this EDM, it allow us to expand horizon over to the Oracle ERP side, which we have never done that before. So, and not last not least is the analytics, which is the S-based side for us. We heavily rely on the S-based reporting, because that's actually help us on some of the reporting design. Because as I talked about earlier, we took this opportunity to convert out of the offline Excel model, where a lot of users come up with different types of formulas and a model, and we basically take advantage of it on this project to convert them into ASO cube and build formula. so that everybody get the same answer from the system, not from the individual offline Excel spreadsheets.
And just to emphasize, I mean, I commend you because you did this and ran this program for EPM on that track, while there was an entire other initiative as part of your, as you guys call it, Odyssey with Cloud ERP and other applications within Oracle Cloud concurrent. So how was that to manage with those other, I guess, with those other, program or tracks within the program going on?
Yeah, so on this, we have a very, sophisticated PMO team, and they basically the project manager took the lead on overseeing both the ERP and EPM side, and also actually all the HCM and operation side of the, like, for example, the warehouse, the supply chain, and all that stuff. And so it's a more like a special team projects that we have, subject matter expert to assign to that project's team, so that they don't have to be concurrently, dealing with day-to-day tasks, but 100% focus on the project. So with the EPM track, we actually are a little bit more fortunate, just so that we only, carve out 50% of the time, just because of the nature of the beast of, it's more a overall the familiarity of the product that is in the cloud compared to on-prem. My team is very much, very familiar with it. So on that, we didn't have, 100% time to focus on project, but yes, we basically allocate 50% of our time to do that. So it's still very much a huge effort. Basically, before the project kicked off, we just have to plan out a lot of, taking care of a lot of the on-prem automation process that we can, any process that we can automate, we took our chance to basically to automate all the process, so that we just basically let the system with the lights on, with lights out, just kind of, having it continue to run and support it at the same time. So definitely that helps out to kind of, to allocate only 50% of the time to do that. But, definitely just because of the nature of the, being a, like I said, lift and shift approach more on majority of the application.
All right, this is Rami. With that, thank you, Richard, for really detailed, understanding of how the different components of EPM were integrated into your environment, along with during the LDC project. We'll be talking about mainly key design elements and then a little bit of integration components. So first, we start with the overall design elements that we wanted to address during this project. One of the best things that came out for Cardtronics out of this Odyssey project was the standardized chart of accounts. As Richard mentioned earlier, they had Great Plains and a couple of homegrown local ERP systems across the globe in different operation centers. And all of them were standardized onto Oracle ERP that allowed them to go to a standardized common chart of accounts across the globe, which also means that we were able to piggyback off of that from the EPM perspective and bring that simplicity and that uniformity to EPM products as well. From an overall integration and automation perspective, as Richard mentioned, they had most of their on-prem EPM processes automated. We were able to pretty much replicate that entire process on the cloud using components like Groovy, EPM Automate, REST APIs, working with PowerShell and command files and such, that we were able to basically create a completely lights out solution where most of their implemented solutions were running completely automated. From a consolidations perspective, the main design decisions included the cumulative translation and adjustment process, along with the currency overrides. These were the two processes that were managed in HFM with custom rules, as well as a lot of manual work. So we, by utilizing the FCC's automated module and the processes that we have on hand, as well as customizing a couple of components, we were able to automate that process completely. In their HFM environment, they were doing a lot of the eliminations manually. That was also a time-consuming manual process from the financial team's perspective. Bringing in that component along with all the elimination entities from ERP into FCC allowed us to basically automate the elimination process almost 99%. We also designed the process to allow them to continue to do certain eliminations manually as and when needed. We also brought in a lot of additional reporting components into from HFM into FCC, including a couple of different reporting currencies. Their previous implementations of the products did not support multi-GAAP solutions or multi-book solutions. Right now, they are using GAAP as their reporting solution across different applications. And in the future, they'll be going to IFRS as well. So we configured the consolidation module to support that going forward. We also configured the cash flow movement dimension in FCC to allow them to take advantage of the movement dimension and create automated cash flow down the road, as well as bringing in all the ERP integration components. One of the biggest advantage that they got out of the integration piece and having both cloud ERP as well as EPM products from Oracle was most of the integrations were straightforward. They didn't have to do a lot of customization to that integration other than maintaining their data maps. The integration process has become very, very straightforward. In addition to that, their journal entry process was simplified. Their previously maintained Excel-based journal entry process was rolled into the journal entry process in FCC to allow them to have proper workflows and auditing associated with that. So that's mainly from the consolidation perspective. On the planning side, as Richard mentioned, their biggest advantage was to bring in the workforce module. Previously, they had a homegrown custom workforce solution that only worked for the US business. With this project, what we were able to do was to integrate with HCM, which is deployed globally, and bring in all of the master data as well as the employee details into workforce and provide them with all the drivers necessary to calculate individuals' cost down to the tax and benefits level and allow them to maintain that. The other additional component there was to allow them to get exactly the same process for all of their employees across the globe. Previously, because the certain solutions were siloed in as geographical areas, people were maintaining their own Excel files and maintaining their own forecasting processes that were outside the system. By bringing in all of those components from HCM into planning, we were able to standardize that whole workforce forecasting process across the globe. In addition to doing the workforce forecasting, we also set up the capital planning process for them at a high level. Instead of doing an individual asset level forecasting and budgeting, they have decided to do program level or project level capital planning, which simplified the capital planning process in addition to allowing them to bring it much, much closer to their actual spend and be able to do the proper reporting out of that. All of that, in addition to a custom module that we built to track the various statistical components that they track to drive their revenues and their expenses on the P&L side, based on the number of ATMs being deployed, the partners that they are working with, and various other components. That custom modules provides them with statistical data that is then fed into the financial module and allows them to do all the forecasting based on that. So that was from the planning perspective. From an account reconciliation perspective, one of the biggest change from having to rationalize the chart of accounts was to expand the account reconciliation process to include additional ledger segments and allow them to do the account reconciliation across the globe with a standard process. Everybody is following basically the standard process. They have very well-defined criteria for reconciliation, which simplified their process and also improved the close process and improved the timing on the close process. The largest component from a reporting and analytics perspective were introduced to them through the ASO cube that we built in the Oracle Cloud that allowed them to take a large majority, I would say almost 200-300 different Excel spreadsheets across the globe, people using different kind of calculations, doing different currency conversions and constant currency conversions and non-GAAP calculations, and coming up with numbers for their own little regions. And at times you come across situations like that and you realize that everybody is using island of information that is very focused on their own specific areas. They may be using a little bit different calculation methods, or they may be using a rate that was published 6 weeks ago instead of using rate that was published yesterday, and so on and so forth. We eliminated a lot of those components by bringing in all of their custom calculation components they had in Excel into the ASO cube. And that allowed them to do constant currency calculations. We built about 7 different constant currency calculations in the ASO cube, as well as doing a lot of non-GAAP calculations, which is all the KPI calculations that they do reporting off of, as well as doing all the variance analysis. So the ASO cube basically was the conglomeration of the ERP data, as well as the consolidation data, as well as data coming out of the financial budgeting process, and allowing them to do pretty much all the reporting out of that. And on top of that sits the narrative reporting component, which allows them to do more management reporting style, book-based reporting, as well as everybody is now focused on going to that area to get their reports instead of having their own little ad hoc reporting components that they created connecting to various different applications. One of the biggest advantage on the narrative reporting side is that you're able to connect to EPM and non-EPM products from there. So that allows you to do combined reporting from both of those different components. The big change from a procedure perspective was the master data management. As Richard mentioned earlier, they were an EPMA shop, so their master data process was very siloed into the EPM world, and all the ERP components were basically being maintained outside. There's always that communication gap, the timing differences, and so on and so forth that would cause issues to keep everybody in sync. By implementing EDM, they were able to design a proper master data process that and adapt a more proper master data process that basically updated their master data in not just ERP and EPM, but down the road also into the non-ERP core applications that are transactional in nature. That EDM component also brought in the workflow and auditability, which obviously was a big plus versus having an Excel-based or some ticketing-based workflow process. From a overall interface perspective, we brought in pretty much, we came in with an idea that we need to do the EDM first. So we started with EDM. We set up all our master data components in EDM first. We set up a master application where major relationship between the different master data components were maintained. This is basically the area where we were maintaining all the common components across all the different hierarchies that are being shared by other different applications. After having the master application set up, we set up the target applications that were specific to individual components, such as ERP had its own target applications, or SEC, or EPM planning, or the S-Base Cube on the Oaks environment. All of those different applications that are subscribing to the master application, receiving all the updates that are being done to the master applications, and then maintaining application-specific properties within those target applications. That also allowed us to automate a lot of those processes of moving the master data from EDM into the other into the downstream applications like ERP and planning and FCC. The biggest advantage with the EPM from an EPM versus the EDM's perspective was that a lot of these processes could be automated using REST API or EPM automate processes, which simplifies their master data component. From an ERP perspective and HCM perspective, the master data coming from EDM meant they didn't have to maintain the Excel file that they started the ERP setup with. And all the master data component came from EDM, so allowing them to eliminate that entire manual process. From an ARC's perspective, we really not really a whole lot of master data, but integration with ERP at both GL and sub GL level, allowing them to do seamless integration and build the profiles in ARCs based on the master data that is coming in addition to having all the workflow components there as well. From a consolidations perspective, we brought in the ERP data directly from cloud ERP into consolidation processes without having to have any kind of file-based processes, which would eliminate, which would potentially expose their data to some people who are not supposed to have access to. The whole consolidation integration with ERP also provided them with a common standard for maintaining the first level of transformation that are needed from ERP into consolidation process. Then those transformations were carried on downstream into the planning and the reporting components. So once consolidation processes were completed, that data set then is pushed into both the reporting component on the Oak side as well as into the finance module in the workforce planning process. So workforce planning connected to HCM also allowed them to bring in a lot of the information from HCM, which previously was not being maintained in the planning processes. Basically, planning was a tool that provided them with headcount and some rudimentary financial impact of the headcount movements. With workforce module, they are able to bring in a lot of additional details like what level of taxes these particular employees need to be paying, and based on their geographical location, we set up various different components there as well to provide them with all the details to calculate individuals' expenses and the impact of that on the financial side. We also brought in the data from a consolidation. I'm going to go back to consolidation for a minute. I forgot to mention a very important piece over that. We brought in that entire history that we could from HFM into the FCC environment. That process went through a 3 or 4 step conversion process. You got to remember, they changed their chart of accounts. At the same time, they are also changing tools. So that whole conversion process from HFM to consolidation was also automated. That allowed them to reload that data multiple times. And every time we consolidated the historical data and matched it to HFM and we found some inconsistency, we were able to quickly reload that data because we had a predefined conversion process with a validation processes built in between. From planning to analytics side, we basically took all the consolidated data into the Oaks Cube as well as the finance data from the planning and budgeting processes into the same reporting cube. In addition to having a couple of reporting cubes that were built to give them statistical analysis and other non-finance related operational reporting. On top of that, those were Oaks cubes. We built procedural calcs to calculate the currency, constant currency, as well as various components from the non-financial related KPIs. This gave them a cube that could generate a report in mere seconds versus somebody creating an Excel file and creating formulas and mapping everything in and taking half a day of their time to prepare just one report. So that's from the reporting perspective. So all of those different components were then automated using either EPM Automate wherever possible, or we also used REST API. Specifically on the consolidation side, we wanted to make sure that if there was a process coming in, bringing data from ERP into consolidation process, if it failed for some reason that was more than just missing data files or missing mapping or so on and so forth, we built a REST API process for them using PowerShell as a common component to connect, to run the processes, to download the log files, to parse the log files, to look for a specific keywords in the log file, and then fire off emails if those key events were occurring in the log file. So a lot of that integration component also was done using, as I said earlier, REST API and EPM Automate. We also did utilize Groovy scripting extensively within the planning components to have the data movements between the different planning modules, from workforce to finance, from CapEx to finance, from statistical model to finance. A lot of these pieces using the smart push or data maps, we created Groovy scripts and Groovy business rules for allowing them to run specific segments of data movement and map them and process them accurately. And that was from the system interfaces perspective.
Thank you, Rami. That was a phenomenal story. And in any good story, there's probably some good lessons learned. Or you could say, you know what, I wouldn't do anything differently. But tell us some of the things that you guys would kind of the realizations from the project.
So, I mean, you're absolutely right, right? There is no such thing as a project where you're not going to learn anything new. Every project presents a different challenge. We learn different things from every project. One of the biggest advantage that we got from Cardtronics project, Cardtronics team, was that deep understanding and early on involvement from the finance team. You have to understand they were doing cloud ERP deployment at the same time we were working on EPM. These guys were working extremely hard in long hours, but they were on point. They were always involved in our processes, always answered every question we had. That is a very big component. Without their involvement, having a successful EPM deployment is nearly impossible. From a training and a testing perspective, we started with the idea that maybe we'll do just-in-time training for the UAT components, and what we realized is that with all these other processes being changed and a lot of other components being moved around as an overall Odyssey project was being rolled out, it was more beneficial for us to prepare formalized training material and then hand off the training material to the trainers that would be training the individual people in different areas before we did the UAT. Having them separated allowed us to accomplish a couple of different things, right? Our UAT was a lot faster and more, and provided us with a lot more feedback instead of, oh, I don't know how to log into these things, or what is this dimension mean, or some of those, common questions, and also allowed them to go through multiple iterations of UAT with the training material on hand, getting them ready to use the system when it went to production. As I mentioned earlier, right, we used various different components for automation. One of the things that happens that a lot of people have complaints about or concerns about going from on-prem solution into the cloud world is automation. How are we going to run our automations? What happens to all these lights out solutions that we have built for the on-prem solutions that we currently are running? And that is the big advantage that we got by using not just one or two technologies. Oracle has very many different technologies that are available at our disposal to automate various different processes. Right, so that was a big plus, not just for us, but also for Richard's team. You got to remember, Richard's team is now responsible not just for EPM, but also for master data in ERP. So having automated all of the processes, as many as processes as possible, allowed his team to become more agile in supporting this solution. I don't need to mention anything about implementation partner. Obviously, we were there, and we, with their proper support, we're able to put together a very comprehensive solutions. And from the and you can't forget the idea of having a common platform, right? As Richard mentioned earlier, Great Plains and Blackline and Hyperion and all of these different components having their own different processes, bringing all of those components into one optimized solution that basically looks and feels the same no matter where you go. If you're familiar with it, Cloud ERP now looks exactly like EPM, which looks exactly like Oaks, right? So a lot of those uniformity brings in a it brings in this idea that it's very easy for somebody who is just getting into this world to understand what each one of those icons means. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, the conversion of historical data with Richard's team and having very detailed validation-based conversion strategy allowed us to load and reload that historical data many times throughout the project's life to make sure that when we were going live, our processes, our products were reporting the numbers that they had been reporting to the street for the last 3-4 years. And that's a big plus as well.
Thank you, Rami. So Richard, did you achieve the goals that you set out to achieve?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the goals, as me and Rami, as we mentioned a couple of times already, is really, restructure our chart of account, and definitely the tool selection definitely have helped us to get through that hurdle, because that is probably the biggest challenge, because the tool actually allows a lot of flexibility and to kind of go through the change of chart of account. Part of the challenges, the elimination, intercompany elimination is manual. With that, we also achieved the goal to automate like almost 95% of our intercompany elimination. There's still some that probably the corporate accounting team decide that they still want to kind of perform journal entry, which is, I think, still is still very much, satisfy that goal. We talk about HFM being a kind of getting longer and longer to consolidate. That also reduced that going into the consolidation closing module of EPM. If some of you actually familiar with HFM, the way we used to do HFM consolidation is you have to make sure you consolidate, translate, and come back and consolidate and translate, which is kind of, you have to create different grid and all of that to do that. But going into FCC, the process is a lot simpler. The admin can easily just run consolidation and translate, and there we go, and you got the numbers that you need from a consolidation perspective. Obviously, we talk about the on-premise maintenance. That also kind of helps to eliminate that aspect of the cost. And with Oracle Cloud, all our server is eventually get sunsetted, and obviously last year we just went live, and we plan to sunset basically all our Hyperion on-prem Hyperion server probably by fall, which is almost 1 year that we need to have it set there. So it's kind of, we'll be achieving our goal this year. And then planning wise, workforce is definitely a great features that I think customer from the FP&A side actually loves it. Now they have a lot of visibility to the workforce planning side, so that they don't rely on island of spreadsheets that people maintain that they got from a different HR system or whatnot. Now everything is on the same global platform. That is how to create a lot of visibility at the corporate level. Then definitely the participation around the world on everybody have their input on what they need is the opportunity to kind of get us, on the same platform, because our, vision from our CEO is one team. Basically, we want to kind of work together and produce, ideas and also work as a team. And last but not least is space is where we actually, I think, reduce the level of effort on people maintain their offline spreadsheets to calculate all kinds of different non-GAAP measure or different measure. Now that it's all coming from one source of the truth, which is using the ASOQ that we have built through the projects. So I think this is a great story that I think we share, and I think we did very well on this project.
Well, we think you did really well on the project, and it's definitely a team effort. So you guys, we have the right folks from a consulting, but it really takes the right customer vision and participation, and your team, and of course yourself, have so much experience and background in this space as well. So talk to us a little bit about what your vision is as far as next steps in the future.
Our next step definitely is to continue to, work with Oracle as the product is obviously evolving, and there's a lot of new features and new from a automation or different function that it comes on board, and definitely something we're looking forward to work. There's still a lot of EDM side of the I guess the enhancement that we're working very closely with Oracle team on, and lately a lot of the recent features upgrade FCCS has a lot of cool things that almost mirror close to how we used to have HFM, how we use HFM. And our kind of vision is this year is hoping that we'll get onto more the dashboard analytics side, where part of the analytics, which is S-based folks, is come with the BI portion of things. So that's definitely is our next step to go to.
Great, thank you. So as far as one of the opportunities for the folks on the phone and a lot of our customers, we're working closely with our delivery team on speed to value assessments, and these assessments enable us to take a look at your existing environment that may be Oracle, Hyperion legacy on-premise, it could be other technologies, and help you guys map to the Oracle Cloud, make recommendations, not just from a technology perspective, but from a people and process perspective as well, and provide you with a roadmap and project charter, and also help prioritize those initiatives. A lot of times we'll work with customers to help with assessing the maturity in certain key areas within the EPM space, and that's an opportunity we'd love to participate on with our customers as far as next steps. We do have some questions in the queue for Richard and Cardtronics, so I will start off as we go to Q&A. Just in terms of what is some of the benefits out of Oracle that maybe you didn't see coming?
One of the benefits we see with this economic environment that we have, what we didn't see coming is with all our financial and operation system on the cloud, how easy to be able to access to it, and the flexibility to allow people to get on it anytime, and very minimal downtime and maintenance. I think we see it, become a benefit, and basically kind of Oracle doing the work for us on the back end. That's one thing I didn't see it coming, but we definitely have benefits from this economic environment that's going on.
Richard, you alluded earlier to some of the enhancements that have come out with FCC and with the EDM application. I imagine this is a different, kind of environment, having cloud applications with frequent updates. How has that been deployed for you? How's your experience incorporating those new updates on a more frequent basis?
Definitely a lot more testing that requires us, to kind of pay attention to all the release updates that's, Oracle is released on every month. And the patching, in terms of all the features that they come out, it's very customer centric. And I think the idea that Oracle having the Idea Lab out there, and they closely monitor that tool that they have deployed recently, I think early this year, and they listen to the customer, and a lot of features that's come out reflect that, they have, kind of working with the customers and hearing, how someone like myself being in the on-prem legacy system for a long time, you cannot truly just drop every single thing that you have experimented in the past and say, let's hop onto the new system. So we're working closely with them, trying to provide our kind of use case and with the lab and developer on the back end and working very closely with them. I think that's something that I see the advantage of get onto the cloud. I don't want to say early, but but enough information and care from the support and development team.
Thank you, Richard. So I know we're running tight on time, but happy to answer any questions if you could stay with us. Not sure if there are any other questions in the queue, but definitely wanted to reiterate our appreciation for Cardtronics and Richard for joining us. And thank you guys so much for participating in this webinar. We really appreciate it.
So for those of you, we have reached the top of the hour, and we understand that your time is precious and you may have scheduled other events back to back on your schedule. So for those of you that would like to stay on, I do see that there are some questions in the queues, Stephen. If you see those there, some folks have asked, we'd be happy to take some of those questions now and address them, but we also can follow up with you if you need to drop. So certainly understand that. Okay, I will go ahead and read some of the questions that I'm seeing here. So I'm not quite sure, Rami, if this is for you. It says specifically for planning, when you mentioned pattern recognition and predictive analytics in a monthly forecasting process, is data automatically pre-filled for final users according to previous input data? And it says, i.e. company prices that are not changed just twice in a year and that are used in calculating gross sales. That makes sense?
So from a predictive planning perspective, it doesn't necessarily fill in the information that you have entered based on the historical entries that you have made to the forecast material. What it is basically doing is looking at the historical actual trends, and based on that creates a probability cone, something similar to what you would see from your meteorologist when they are talking about the cone of probability, and then allows you to modify those numbers just by dragging some lines, and instead of having to type in actual numbers. And then if you find a particular scenario that fits your trending methodology or your future forecasting processes, you can just migrate that over to the main forecast.
Thank you. We have another question here. This is from Satish. Satish would like to know, how long is the PBCS cloud implementation in terms of weeks or months? It looks as if there are many parts and projects, just to get an idea of how long it took to complete integration and workforce and capital PBS planning apps.
So I'll take that again. It depends on how the methodology, which methodology do you apply to the implementation process. We have implemented ePBCS projects in as short a time as 10, 12 weeks, or as long a time as few months. It all depends on how much understanding you have of your current processes, how much you're modifying, and what particular methodology you want to apply to the deployment cycle. Right. One of the ideal way to do the ePBCS implementation would be to go ahead and transition your financial processes to the framework financial module, and then slowly and gradually add the complexity of workforce and CapEx and projects forecasting, and maybe towards the end of it also add strategic forecasting processes as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all at once. A lot of clients prefer to do a piecemeal approach where they migrate their existing forecasting process from financial perspective and then add the components and configure them as they are learning more about how their forecasting process needs to evolve.
Thank you, Rami. There's another question here. Is there any upgrade utility tool offering to migrate from on-premise to cloud solution, or is it a complete redesign solution? for ePBCS apps?
From a planning perspective, you do have a couple of options. You don't have to use the framework. If you don't want to use the framework, you can also now, with the availability of the free-form planning processes in the EPM stack, you could potentially take your existing forecasting components that you have built on an on-prem solution and migrate them to the cloud without making any modifications to them whatsoever. But at the same time, you have to remember, cloud does bring a lot of new components, and it makes more sense to look at those new components and what efficiencies they are going to bring to the table and incorporate them while you are doing the migration, instead of just doing a lift and shift migration without making any changes and then trying to go back and incorporate those changes later on. Ideally, you would want to bring those and utilize those new functionality that is available in the cloud and design or partially modify your design to take best advantage of those new features.
I think we have one last question here we might be able to squeeze in. It's related to workforce planning. It said, the question to try to summarize here is, can we do workforce planning employee-wise in PBCS? Is there a difference from on-prem? And a little background was given in terms of number of employees and turnover rate being high and having to go a level up for planning at position and grade level.
Yes, when you are setting up the workforce module, you do have the ability to set up the module at a job code level instead of an individual employee level. You could also potentially do a hybrid approach where you know that your G&A employees are going to more or less stay stable and you're not going to have a revolving door there. But in your operations world, you might end up having a lot of revolving door situations. So you may want to maintain that forecast at a job code level. That was one of the conversations we had at Cardtronics, actually, because from a Cardtronics perspective, the people who are driving those trucks delivering cash to different ATM machines, that's a very volatile job, and usually there's a lot of turnover in that. So we did discuss that early on to potentially do the forecasting at a job code level for those folks, and we were able to do a partial implementation of that, where the new hires were not actually captured by individuals, but as a group of, let's say 15 new drivers would be working in UK for next 6 months or so. So yeah, both of those approaches are available in Workforce.
So with that, we definitely have exceeded our allotted time, and I think we've addressed everyone's questions. But if you do have additional questions that arise, just feel free to reach out to Perficient. You can visit our website. There are contact us forms there. Everyone should have received some type of communication to join today's event from our webinar platform. If you respond to one of those emails, you'll be automatically directed to me, Susan Welton, and I'll make sure that your question gets to the right folks. So with that, I would like to once again thank our speakers today. Thank you so much to our customer, Richard, for joining us and sharing your story. It was a wonderful story and well told by both you and Rami. And I'd also like to extend my thanks to Rich Wilkie from Oracle for joining the call today as well. And of course to Stephen Bricker. Nobody can moderate quite like you. So thank you to everyone for joining us on today's call, and we hope to see you online in the future.